the weaning of Isaac. We had the departure of Ishmael. And now we're going to have a visit to Abraham by a couple of gentlemen, Abimelech or Abimelech, whichever way you want to call it. But anyways, he is coming, and so we are going to be speaking about this gentleman today. What has happened over the last few weeks or the last few years let's go back to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. That chapter in the Bible started out with 3 angels visiting Abraham. You remember the story. One of those was the second person of the Trinity. And the great news that Sarah, the first time it was mentioned really, that Sarah is going to have a boy. Now Abraham, all the way back from when he left the Ur of Chaldees and when he left Pandamaram, whenever he left there after his father's death, he knew that God had promised him he was going to be a great nation. And like I've explained, these 2 kids back in the Ur of Chaldees got married. She maybe was, let's just say, 15, and he was like 25. And from that point on in their lives, they wanted to have a child. They wanted to have a baby. All the way to Pandamaran, Abraham now is 75, and she is like 65. They still want to have a baby. God says you're going to be a great nation, and so they have been working on that situation. No baby. And they go on, and I'm not going to go on and go through all the mistakes that Abraham made and things. What I love about the New Testament when it speaks about Abraham, it doesn't talk about all the... And I'm glad when I get to glory, there will be no talking about what I've done wrong in the past, right? And so now we have a time where finally there's Jesus basically said to Abraham, you're going to have a son this time in basically a year. And so, but then he goes on after that great news and tells him that he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And who's there? Lot. Lot was more like a son. Abraham called him brother. He was more like a son to Abraham. And Abraham had watched him leave and go to Sodom and Gomorrah, and then you know the story, how he was outside and then he was inside, and then he became a leader, and you know the story about Lot and the sadness of the destruction of those cities, and Lot leaving those cities and had a choice. Abraham is now, as they're being destroyed, is on the mountain overlooking them as they're being destroyed. And I can't help but believe Abraham is waiting for Lot to come walking up the side of the mountain back to him where he needed to be. And you know the story. Lot chose Zohar, and then he chose going into the cave. And I don't want to get into all of that story. But that was the tragedies where it was. And Abraham has left that and has gone now over to Gerar. And this is where we are today in Israel. That is right near where Hamas is. It is that area of the Gaza Strip. And it's just the southern part of the Gaza. And that's where Abraham went. And as he got there, he made another mistake. He told Abimelech that this is my sister. And of course we found out it was his sister. Abraham married his sister, but from another mother. And he explains that, and I don't want to get into all of that. But he has now moved into this area of the Philistines. Abimelech goes and gets Sarah, and she becomes a part of his little brood. The problem is, Abraham, we see no prayers on his part to God about this situation. He has. It's hard to understand his mind and his thinking as he comes into this area. Abraham was a great army general. I mean, when we look at what he did with Chedorlaomer and that crew and chased him for 60 miles, he was 200 miles away. He finally caught up with him and chased. Man, oh man, this guy, he don't have to take a back seat to anybody. But now we find what happened was, and you know, we get into that in just a little bit. Now we fast forward to today, and actually, there was that period of time where Sarah was due to conceive, to bear Isaac, and now Abraham had let her slip away, and the dangers that would have ensued. But God moved it back. Now we are at a point where in this chapter we've seen Isaac was about, 3-4 years old. He was weaned. Ishmael was around 17 years old, and he was cast away with his mother Hagar. And actually, they're not far from where Abraham has moved to. They were a little further south into the deserts. And then now we have Abimelech has come back. So the period of time that we're talking about now is Abraham has been here about anywhere from 4 to 5 years. The baby wasn't born when he got there. The baby wasn't conceived when he got there. And so a year later, so that was 1 year, and now the baby was weaned. Isaac is weaned, and Ishmael is cast away because he laughed. And that wasn't laughed. The word laugh there means he laughed at. He was making fun of Isaac, and Sarah made sure that he was gone. And so now what we have today, 5 years that Abimelech has watched Abraham, and now he's coming and paying him a visit. And this is desert land where Abraham has put up and stayed. And he's been given permission to do that. Now, I wrote on here, and I don't know why I wrote this, because this is not, I don't know, Abraham overstays his welcome. Abraham never overstood his welcome. So somehow I put that in an outline and pulled it back up as I was going through and as I study. So you can change that. But it came to pass in verse number 22, at that time, and time is always important with God. Time is important with you and I. Let's put it that way. Time is not important with God. God does things in His time, which is not our time. And Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captains of the host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. So we've set the time now at 4 to 5 years after Abraham had first met Abimelech. And so we have that time as set. And now we find that we have Phicol is considered here a chief captain of the host. Basically, I don't know that this is his name. There's some questions as to whether this is his name or the name of his position. Abner, by the way, we find in the Bible was the captain of the host of Israel. And basically he was in charge of the military. And so what we have is Abimelech has come. He is the leader of the Philistines at this time. And again, his name may not be necessarily his name as a person. It may be his name as a position. Because we're going to see Abimelech's name mentioned several times down the line, whether it be his sons that are take it up or what have you. But these men have paid Abraham a visit. Now, what is it that they say? God is with thee in all that thou doest. So they've had 5 years to examine Abraham. And as we have watched God move and work with Abraham, God has blessed him everywhere he goes. I mean, he left Haran. He went down to Shechem, and then he goes over to Bethel. And he had 3 basic places where he lived: Bethel and Hebron, and over here in Beri Shavak, where we're going to see him today. And he has been blessed everywhere he has been. Actually, when he went to Egypt, you remember what happened? They gave him all kinds of sheep and cattle and everything and said, get out. And now he went here, and they did the same thing. In chapter 20, Abimelech gave him all kinds of sheep and everything, but the difference was he said, stay with us. And Abraham has stayed, and now it says here, God is with thee in all that thou doest. I wrote about that this week. Y'all, everybody get the letter? I wrote about this week. Has anybody ever come up to you and said, I noticed that God is with you in all that you do? Has anybody ever come up to you and said that? You know, we are different. I don't know if you've known. I think it's a little bit obvious. I watched the 2 political let me try to say this, figure out a way to say this. When they were taking votes as to who they're going to choose for the different parties for their, and I noticed the difference in the people that they were interviewing in the one and then the other. And I noticed the amount of godly people who were not ashamed of the gospel of Christ in one group. I never really heard any in the other group, other than one person said, my name is Barbarita or something, but I go by she or her as my pronouns. So there's difference, but there's a difference in God's people. There should be a difference in you. When you leave, we're gathered together here and we're all we're all spiritual. We get in church, right? Yeah, we're spiritual. We get in church. We all loving on one another and hugging on one another. What do you say about me when you leave? God's people ought to be different. The Bible says we're a peculiar people, and that's understandable. We are. Not everybody's going to like us. And the sad thing is, those that don't like us really don't like us. But here we have this man, Gentile, that is saying to him, I've noticed that God is with you and has blessed you in all that thou doest. God is with thee in all that thou doest. This guy was a smart man. Now, in chapter 26, we're going to find out that his son wasn't necessarily as smart. But there's going to be some things that happen here that we find that he wants to buddy up to Abraham a little bit. And there could be a reason why. I think one might be that he heard about the battle with Chedorlaomer. But I think more than anything, in Genesis chapter 20 and verse number 2, if you remember, Abraham allowed Abimelech came and took Abraham's wife to be one of his wives. But remember, he went to sleep at night, Do you remember that? He had a dream. And in that dream, he had an awakening. When Almighty God said, "Behold, thou art but a dead man." Now that'll wake you up. That'll wake you up. That'll wake you up. And so he's like, "What have I done?" And God said, "You've taken another man's wife." And he said, "Well, no, I don't know nothing about it. That is nothing." He never said anything. And then he said, "Well, you better give her back or you're a dead man." Basically what he said. And so, and then he was told that Abraham is a prophet and that he will pray for you. So Abraham is uniquely different. Now this man has had 5 years to watch God move and work with Abraham. He's watched Isaac be born. He's watched Isaac be weaned. He's watched Ishmael and the situation there. He has seen God move in the life of Abraham. He has seen Abraham grow. His flocks have grown. And perhaps one of the reasons he's come out is Abraham is getting bigger than he is. Yeah. And if he did hear about the little 318-man army that he had, he might... by the way, that's what Israel is like today. Do you ever see the map? Yeah, have you ever seen the map of little bitty Israel? You have this one little section here of Israel. Over here, you have Iran. And it's this little bitty country right here is taking care of itself, and God is blessing them. Did you know that when Israel come back, when 1948, all the way from 135 A.D. when Hadrian changed the name from Palestine, or from Israel to Palestine, and from that period of time until 1948, it was basically left to the Arab, just kind of people that they didn't do anything with the land. It just became a desert. They settled it, but they didn't do much with it. Some Israelites had come and were living there. But in 1948, when Israel came in and won the victory, you want to read about a battle. They didn't have modern guns. I was telling you the story of a guy that was a pilot during the war in America. He began to buy up old airplanes and fix them back up. And then go to Slovakia and buy guns and fly them back into Israel. They had just a ragtag army and went in and won a great victory. God blessed them. God has always blessed them. And God said He'll bless them that bless thee. Yes. Now therefore swear, He says, in the next verse, verse 23, now therefore swear unto me by God. Who's God? His God or Abraham's God? Abraham's God. Swear to me by God. Now, he has already met Abraham's God in a dream. So I'm sure he's paid close attention to Abraham. Swear unto me here by thy God, by God, that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son. So on through generations, according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. The word sojourn means you're living there. Basically he's in a tent. He can move, a mobile home. He can move whenever he wants, And he swear unto me, This word swear, I guess somehow you get into sevens with this. And we'll get into that a little bit as we go. But not deal falsely with me. Be upfront with me. Well, now, why did he say that? Because Abraham had already let him have his wife once. So, I mean, he's coming to him now and says, be upfront with me. Be truthful with me. Let me know what your intentions are. These reasons for going, my son, it might be because of hearing the everlasting covenant that he made with Abraham and the seal of that covenant which we saw in the circumcision. According to the kindness that I have done unto thee. In other words, he had been kind to Abraham. He had left him alone. He had allowed him the privilege of living there in their land and not bother them. Thou shalt do unto me and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. Abraham says something here real simple. I swear. Now, that is not a covenant. Okay? That's saying, I agree to a covenant, but that's not the covenant, because Abraham has a problem that he wants to bring before this man. And so here's what he comes up and says. Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. Now that word reproved, you have to, these two men are together. They're communicating together. There's no indication that Abimelech even is aware of this. So I don't know that Abraham, this word is meant as strongly as it may have been, but I think it was meant firmly. I think he presented it firmly. When we look at leaders today in our country, there's some that can firmly make their point, and some that can't. But here we find that I believe he firmly made the point to him. And the word violently there, gasal, it means to tear away. So basically what has happened as they have dug wells, and they're in the desert, you understand this. They're in kind of a desert area, and they have to have water. So they'll dig down till they can find a spring. And the wells, basically, it could be many wells. I was looking this morning, I was looking for pictures of Abraham's well. And there's history a man named Robertson went and found several of the wells. And there's something like 7 that at one time. But then when Abraham died, they covered them all back up. And when Isaac came back, he uncovered them. And if you go to Bir Shabak, you'll see them today. Some of them are on display. But they were taken away violently, aggressively. They stole the wells. Now, let me just say here, Abraham showed great reserve. When we look at men, Jacob was kind of a weak leader. He was mama's boy. He was always kind of a weak leader. Simeon and Levi kind of took care of business from time to one time that didn't go well with him. But Abraham is not a weak leader. Abraham is a strong leader. Anybody that can take 318 men and run 200 miles and whoop an army that had just been taking up the whole area and chase them 60 miles. Anybody that can do that and bring back all the goods and things and the people, they're not a weak leader. But he reproves him, and they talk about it, and we find that in verse number 26, this is a shock to Abimelech. And he says, I don't know about this. I don't know who hath done this thing. Neither didst thou tell me. Now, I like this. I like this. When you're having a conversation and you've just been reproved, all right, he comes up the next statement, I don't know anything about it, and then he throws it back on Abraham. Why didn't you tell me? You never told me. Nobody said anything about this. Neither didst thou tell me. Neither did yet heard I of it, but today. So what he is saying is, you're upset, you're reproving me, but I didn't know it, and you didn't tell me. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and both them made a covenant. The covenant that they made was, we've seen the covenant in Genesis 15, where God told Abraham to get these animals and split them. And then as the animals laid out, Abraham was to keep the birds and the animals away from the carcasses. And he would walk between the carcasses. And that was the covenant, and God accepted that and took the sacrifices. And this is the type of covenant that they would have done. And so they would have walked between the carcasses, and God would have been a part of this covenant that was being made. Just to shake hands is not a covenant. Just to say I'm going to make a covenant, it's not a covenant. There was something that God, it would require the blood of these animals and these carcasses. And then Abraham did another thing. He set out 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech comes up and says, what meaneth these 7 lambs which thou hast set by themselves? He didn't understand what it was. And he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take off of my hand, that they may be witness unto me that I have digged these wells. All right, Abimelech, if you will receive these lambs, this is a covenant I'm making with you. This is my title. This is my title to the wells. I own these wells. And you accept that, and you're accepting the title. You're giving me title to the wells that I have. And he accepted those. And then we find that the place is called... it's when I look in the Bible, when I look in concordances and try to get proper names, I'm so used to calling names that are not the name. You know, it's like Abimelech. It really is Abimelech, and so I have trouble with that. And this here, Beersheba, all our lives we've called it Beersheba, but it's actually split up to Bereh Shavak, and or people have used it Berah Shavak, is the way that the name is pronounced. And it has the meaning of it is the well of 7, or the well of swearing. And today there's a city with that name, and in that city is Abraham's wells and things like that. Thus they made a covenant, and then Abraham rose up and Abimelech rose up, and Pekah, the chief captain of the host, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And then we find that Abraham planted a grove. Go ahead and put that tree up there if you would. I'd like to give you treats every once in a while. This is a tree that Abraham would have planted. Now, when you say Abraham planted a grove, oh no, he's worshiping in groves. No, what this was a shade tree in the desert. If you will look at the ground around the tree, do you see any grass? That tree grows, tamarisk, I think is what it's called. I'll have to, the pronunciation probably wrong. But it grows in the desert, and it gives shade, and he would have planted several of these trees. Now, let me say another thing about the planting of the trees. It means he's going to stick around a while. Trees got to grow. I planted 18 trees at the house. And I was telling my wife, we need to get big trees because at 80 years old, I'd like for them to see them grow rather than have to wait for them to grow. But anyways, that's the tree he planted. And really what it was is a place he could go and have a place of quiet in the shade where he could pray and spend time with God. You need a place like that, right? A place where you can worship God. The closet. All right, let's all stand and we'll be dismissed. Father, I thank you for the wonderful day you've given us. Father, I pray you'll bless this day. I pray that you'll use us to honor you. Pray that you'll bless Brother Koenig as he brings the message and empower him. Give him a holy unction this morning and use him to honor you. I just pray that you'll bless Brother Hahn as he preaches this morning and empower him. And God bless his family.